today we're going to show you that the Dome of the Rock itself also debunks the early Islamic history. Well, greeting everyone. This is Fadi, and I am so excited, of course, that we are still going through this amazing series of short videos intentionally done that way by myself and Dr. J in order to help you, of course, simplify things. So we're putting it all together for you in a systematic format to be able to debunk the early Islamic history known as the standard Islamic narrative. Now, in the last couple of episodes, we showed you that the coins debunk early Islamic history. Rock inscriptions do also debunk early Islamic history. And today we're going to show you that the Dome of the Rock itself also debunks the early Islamic history. With me here, as always, is Dr. J. Dr. J, welcome back.
Thank you so much.
So what about this Dome of the Rock that is a big deal for Islam?
Okay, you tell me what you know about the Dome of the Rock. Now, tell me what you've been told as a Muslim.
Well, I mean, simply put, the Dome of the Rock is a big deal, of course, simply because the rock that we're talking about is the rock that allegedly Muhammad, when during the Isra and Mi'raj, basically he was taken from Mecca, whether in spirit or physically, all the way to Jerusalem.
Well, he was told to get on the back of the Burak.
That's right, but he was taken, went there, he prayed over that rock, and there were some prophets behind him, and then he ascended to heaven from there. So that's what the rock is all about.
7 heavens.
Correct.
Mate Allah, who tells you to pray 50 times a day.
It's Moses who was his Allah.
And he comes down to the 5th heaven on his way back down, and Moses stops him and says, how many times did he ask you to pray?
Yeah, exactly.
Moses said 50. He said, no, that's way too many. Go back and see if you can get it down. So he jumps back up to the 7th heaven, brings it down to 35. And then Moses, still too many. So he bounces back between the 5th and the 7th
Moses
heaven.
is the God of Islam.
There you go. And he brings it down finally from 50 to 35 to 20 to 15 to 10, finally down to 5. Once he gets it to 5, Moses says, okay, that's enough. Go back down to earth. So Moses is the one who dictates how many prayers we have today, which means this is happening in 621. So this is, according to the standard Islamic narrative, that's the year this happened. So it's the year before he moves up to Medina. So here he comes back down to earth and receives gets back on the winged horse there at the rock, which is Mount Moriah, and flies on back down to Mecca. And that's why then Abdul Malik built. That's what we're told. The standard Islamic narrative tells us, right? That Abdul Malik built this in 691 to commemorate that event.
That's right.
The Miraj, you call it the Isra Miraj.
Yes, Isra wa Mi'raj.
Miraj. Now, if that is the case, then I would suggest the Dome of the Rock is pretty important. How important is it for Muslims? As far as shrines, what is are there anything more important than this?
I mean, we believed in the 3 holy mosques.
The 3 holy mosques.
The third one, right there.
Okay, so it's a mosque.
Yeah.
If it's a mosque, it has a Qibla.
That's right.
No, it doesn't.
I mean, that's what you think, right? You know?
It doesn't have a Qibla. Yeah, I remember Dr. Gerald Haunting saying this way back in 1995. I was in his class, and the Muslims were absolutely irate when he said this. And I raised my hand. I said, if it's a mosque, how can it not have a Qibla? He says, I'm not going to answer that. He refused to answer because the Muslims were leaving the class and slamming the door and calling him names as they slammed it because they could not deal with this. It has to have a Qibla if it's a mosque. It has no Qibla. Now, the Dome of the Chain right next to it does have a Qibla. The Dome of the Chain had to be built with a Qibla. What is interesting, the Qibla, take a look at where the Qibla is, because the Qibla is there on the Dome of the Chain. In fact, the entire citadel has a Qibla. So does the Al-Aqsa Mosque, which is on the southern wall. It has a Qibla, and all of those Qiblas are facing Petra. Ooh, I love that. Now, that's a little of a side note. We do want to get back to the Dome of the Rock, 691. Now, right now, I have to be careful because there is a paper that has been released this year by A.J. Deuce. And A.J. Deuce, I want to say this to those who are watching, read that paper, The Serpent King. It's a great paper. A.J. Deuce, thankful, has done an enormous amount of research. He would claim that the Dome of the Rock we're looking at today is not the Dome of the Rock that was built by Abdul Malik. And I agree with him that. I remember doing a debate in this in 1998. I debated this with Sheikh Abdul Green in London. We had a 2-hour debate. And I he came to me and he says, you think it doesn't have a Qibla? Look at the southern portico. There is Surah chapter 2, verse 149, 150 on the door of the southern portico. That's the reference to the Qibla being changed. And look on the drum. Around the drum is chapter 17, verse 1, which talks about going from the great mosque to the farthest mosque, the Masjid al-Haram. From the Masjid al-Haram to the farthest mosque. So that is reference, according to Muslims today, of the Qibla. So he says, therefore, you're wrong, Mr. Smith. What he didn't realize is what I had done my research before the debate, and I said, fortunately, I knew about this. I said, well, do you know when that drum was built? And do you know when that southern portico was built? I don't know. Do you know the date that the drum and the portico were built?
I don't think.
1876.
You see, that was surprising to me when I found out about this. Even recently, I did that with Mel, and you would think it was an 8th century, a 9th century,
No.
a 10th century. Yeah.
It has nothing to do with the 7th century. The Dome of the Rock has been destroyed and rebuilt 11 times. See, I knew this way back in 1995.
Right.
And I introduced that, and that shut down that whole debate. That was only one part of the debate. And I was saying, you've got a real problem here because you are so dependent on the Dome of the Rock as your third holiest shrine, because this is where the Shahada is introduced. La ilaha illallah, Muhammadur Rasulullah. You have to have it there. Otherwise, you don't have any other reference. That's the first reference to Muhammad on any structure. There is a reference to a Muhammad in a coin that is earlier in 660. But that is I'm going to show you who that Muhammad was. In fact, let's talk about this Muhammad, and let's go and look at the slide. So let's put up the slide here, and let's take a look at what we're looking at. So here is the side of the Dome of the Rock, and you can see the cutaway there. The two green arrows. It's the bottom arrow. Look at the bottom arrow and look at that ambulatory. We call it ambulatories. I call it ambulatories because that's usually the technical name. It looks like a structure that goes around. So it's an 8-sided ambulatory. And what A.J. Dios says is that actually it's that outer one that you're looking at with the bottom green arrow, that is where the inscription is with the Shahada. And that's what we're looking at. That's Shahada. According to all the scholars I know, that was introduced by Abdul Malik. A.J. Dios says, no, you probably don't get that inscription there until the 16th century because of the destruction, rebuilds, and destruction, rebuilds. Thomas Alexander has refuted that. So we're having a healthy debate within the sin sifters as to whether or not this is a 691 inscription or is it a 1500 inscription. AD. I am not going to take a side on this. Let's just assume it is 691. Let's just go with Thomas Alexander for sake of argument today, all right? Because I'm not going to make a decision on that this early. And this is what I love, these kind of debates. So if this is a 691 inscription, this is what it says. Now, we've always assumed it's 691. We'll keep it with that. And you have Abdul Malik introducing this inscription. It's a 30 feet inscription with lots of references in Arabic. Interestingly, it has diacritical marks, which is problematic because there was no diacritical marks that early. So obviously, either those diacritical marks were written or added at a later date, or that means that this inscription comes from a later date. You can go either way with that because you can always add inscriptions. If it's mosaic, you can always add the inscriptions at a later date, which is also means you can add an inscription at a later date too if it's just mosaics.
That's right.
That's the beauty of mosaics. You can take stones off and put them in again, and you don't know what the age is on that. Now, what's there is La ilaha Muhammadur Rasulullah is there, and that's why most people are saying this is referring to Muhammad the man. However, take a look at all the inscriptions that precede it and follow it. Chapter 112. Well, let's start with, starts with chapter 4, verse 171, which we have in the Quran today. Say not three, for God is one, and he has no son. Now, who is that attacking?
It's attacking Christianity and the sonship of Christ.
Exactly. So it's attacking Jesus. It's an anti-Trinitarian attack against the Trinitarians, right? Mm-hmm. Which is exactly who Abdul Malik was. He was a Christian, no doubt about it. He talked about, you can see material that he uses in his reign that are very clear that he is a Christian, but he's an anti-Trinitarian Christian. And that's why he's attacking the Trinitarians. And he is a big figure. Listen, he is the caliph. He was the caliph from according to what Joe is saying, it started in 680, not 685. Thomas Alexander also agrees with that. And the Germans seem to be supporting that. And he did an enormous amount. He is the one that introduces the Arabic as the lingua franca for the whole area. And by doing that, he is the one that started the ball on creating a Quran. You had to have a book. If you're going to have a man, you need to have a book. Every prophet had has to have a book. And that's why they had to borrow. We're going to get into that in the next segment on looking at the Quran. But nonetheless, here's the Dome of the Rock, and he introduces this inscription. It's attacking Jesus' divinity, it's attacking the Trinity, and it's attacking the sonship, as you notice.
Right.
Then you have Laila. So if you have this attacking his divinity, Laila means God, for really God is one alone. Remember in that it has alone there.
Wahdahu, yeah.
So that means, why would they say that unless there must have been other beyond him? Well, that again is the Trinity. And this praised one, because that's what Muhammad means. It means the praised one is nothing more than the messenger of God. So if that is the case, who's this referring to?
Yeah, if we read it this way, then obviously you can make the case that this is in reference to Christ himself.
This is really a reference to Christ.
Yeah. And simply because, by the way, in John 14, when Jesus says, and I will send you another comforter, another praised one, which means he is a praised one also.
Exactly. It's the same word.
Yeah.
In fact, don't the Muslims today go back to John 14 and John 16 and say that this parakletos that we have in Greek with the vowels in place is parakletos, which in parakletos, the praised one could be Ahmad, which is diminutive of Muhammad. Mm-hmm. So they like to say that's actually a prophecy of Muhammad.
Correct.
No, it's the praised one, the same praised one that's on the Dome of the Rock here.
Yes.
There, you can see that it's great when you bring in all these threads together. So if that is the case, the blessed one or the praised one is Jesus, and Abdul Malik is amazing. And why? That's why he puts it in Jerusalem. You know, he's living in Damascus. The standard Islamic narrative said he should be living down in Medina. That's where all the caliphs lived. What was he doing way up in Damascus, 1,200 miles away? Well, the reason why is because that was the center of the Umayyad dynasty. He was an Umayyad. That's why Damascus is where the water is. Damascus is where all the vegetation is. Damascus is where the trade routes are. Damascus is where the civilizations have been for centuries. It's one of the old, in fact, it could be one of the oldest cities in the world. Because there's water there. There's no water in Mecca, Medina. He would not have had down. But what does he do? Why doesn't he put it in Damascus then? He puts it in Jerusalem for a reason. Look and see where it's located. I see we're out of time. We need to wrap this all up. But if you look at all this, this is all about Jesus. This has nothing more than do that. There's the last piece of evidence that we needed to fit it all out.
Not only that, I want to add just one last thing. If they had the sophisticated knowledge, engineering knowledge, to build something like this in Jerusalem, why in the world they didn't use it in Mecca? Why didn't they have the Shahada in Mecca around the Kaaba? Why didn't they build something like this in Mecca?
And look where they built it. They put it on Mount Moriah, the Holy of Holies for the Jews, looking down on the Church of the Sepulchre. This is a one-upmanship against the Byzantines. It's a one-upmanship also against the Jews.
Amen. Thank you so much. And hopefully everyone is catching on this theme. And until next time, have a blessed day.